morning, everyone. My name is Chetan Singh, and I welcome you to today's webinar, a webinar which is organized by Chandigarh Judicial Academy and in a collaboration with SCC Online. Today's webinar is on sentencing with reference to concurrence, suspension, and bail on the grounds of custody by Honorable Mr. Justice Ajay Tiwari, Judge, who is a judge at PNH High Court. Sir is a third-generation lawyer and has completed his LLB and LM from Punjab University in the year 1984. And he was elevated as a judge of Punjab and Haryana High Court in the year 2007, December 5. There's more I can talk about this, and there's so much that I can talk about, sir, but considering sir's inclination towards sharing of knowledge, we'll restrict it to this, and I will request sir to please start the session. Sir, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Before I start, this is actually quite a niche subject. The title sounds a little grand, but this has reference only to the recidivist, the multiple convict. The entire discussion today will be based on those people who have been convicted more than once. So a small, that's what I said, a niche subject, but very important. Now, sentencing, of course, I need not discuss sentencing, retributive, reformative, deterrence, all that you know. And you also know that there is something called set-off. So any period which I have spent in custody during the trial of my case would be set off against any sentence of imprisonment which may be imposed upon me. And then there is the issue of concurrence. Now, set off, as we understand it, was there in the original code of the original Criminal Procedure Code in 1860. But, and even before, the concept of set-off has been there from hoary times. But this concurrence of sentence is a relatively new phenomenon. And I think it was, if I may just give you a moment, it was, it came into the code, yes. In 1898. So it's a much later introduction. Now what concurrence does is that it permits a judge, a sentencing judge, to direct that the sentence which he is imposing in the case which is under trial before him would run concurrently with any other sentence which the convict may be undergoing at that time. And it is couched in the widest words. I can just read out section 428 to you, which deals with this. Just give me half a minute. Damn. Anyway, so 428, I can't find it right now. 428 permits the judge to grant concurrence. Now, the general rule is that concurrence is one transactional, which we find in section 31 of the CRPC, which is which offences can be tried together. But we find in actual practice that even when a convict, a person who's tried and is found guilty, is undergoing sentence in another case at the time of this trial. The sentence, he's sentenced, let's say, to 1 year, and it is further directed that the sentence is already undergone. Then another issue which arises with these multiple convicts is at the stage when they are looking for bail. Now, regular bail, as you all know, section 436, 436A, 437, 439. Bail can be sought on the ground of merits, and sometimes it is also sought on the ground of detention, that I have undergone so much detention. The investigation is over. No recovery is to be made from me. The trial is not proceeding as quickly as it can, and therefore please grant me bail. And then the judge looks at the period he has already undergone custody and may grant him bail. Now, this is where a problem arises. As long as a person is an accused, in whatsoever number of cases he may be, I may be an accused in 6 cases. I may be undergoing trial in 6 cases. And I have been in custody for 3 years. None of the trials is complete. Can I then say that please grant me bail because all these offences for which I am being tried have a maximum imprisonment of 7 years, and I have already undergone 3 years in custody? Or can it be then said that no, you are involved in 6 cases and you have only undergone 3 years? In theory, you could be sentenced to 42 years. That is one scenario. The other scenario is where I am facing trial in 6 cases, and in course of time, I am convicted in 1 case. For instance, I was arrested, let's say, on the 1st of January 2018. And over the next 2 years, up till 2020, up till today, I was found to have been involved in 5 or 6 other cases. And the trial in all these cases is going on. And then on 21st of August 2020, I am convicted in the first case. 1 year later, I file an application for bail, same ground, that I have been in custody for 3 years in one of the pending cases, of course. The trial is not proceeding. Kindly grant me bail. So what is to be done in these cases? That is the main issue which I find requires some clarification. Because in the first case, just excuse me. Because in the first scenario which I had spelled out to you, I was an accused in 6 cases. I had not been convicted in any one of them. And I had undergone 3 years of custody. In the second scenario, for 2 years I was in under trial custody in all cases. But then with effect from 21st of August 2020, I was convicted in the first case. and therefore my status had changed. Now this is a tricky situation because the law on this subject is still not very clear in this present context. One view is that where the person is in custody, notwithstanding the fact that he may have been convicted in one case, his entire custody will be counted for all the trials which he is undergoing. This is the view of the Delhi High Court, a learned single judge. And I happen to take a diametrically different view in one decision. Of course, neither was the Delhi High Court judgment brought to my notice. That was prior in point of time. But having gone through that judgment, I'm still persuaded to hold that my view is correct. The issue is that as long as I am an accused, I am entitled to cling to the presumption that I am innocent. And that will be attached to me throughout the trial. The presumption of innocence till proof of guilt, as we all know. And therefore, whether I was arrested in FIR number 1 and was subsequently implicated in FIRs numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5, till such time as I remain accused in all these 5 cases, the presumption of innocence attaches to me. And therefore, to my mind, I would be justified in claiming that please grant me bail. I have undergone 3 years of sentence or custody. Now, the first case which came on this was the judgment of the Supreme Court in the matter of CBI versus Ajay Kulkarni. I will be asking the Academy to send you a soft copy of this judgment so that all of you can go through it in case you so feel. Now, in this decision, the issue was a person was arrested in one case and then is in custody under 167. He is to be released if the charge sheet is not filed within a specific time. And he is undergoing that statutory period when he is also implicated in another case. And in that case also, the investigation is going on. Section 167 applies. So when the issue before the Supreme Court was whether he has to be these 2 periods which are overlapping, can they be counted together or it has to be done separately? And their lordships held that those 90 days would be permitted to be overlapped. That is to say, the investigation would not be able to say that, sir, first count the 90 days of FIR number 1, and for FIR number 2, now count the 90 days after the 90 days of FIR number 1 are over. So the lordship said no. The period which overlaps, if he's completed 90 days in the first case and the second case, you are not allowed to say that the detention in the second case will start only after the period of 90 days is over in the first case. So this was a situation. Of course, it's not a parallel to bail on the ground of custody. In a sense, it is. 167 is bail on the ground of custody if the charge sheet is not filed. But their lordships held that no, he's entitled to count those days because he was an accused person. And therefore, as long as you are an accused, you are allowed to count it. And this issue as to what happens when you are convicted, this came up in a slightly different angle in another case before the Supreme Court in Atul Manu Bhai Parekh versus CBI. And their lordship said no. The issue there was, he was saying that under section 427, I should be allowed to count the total period I have spent in jail as set off for a particular offense. But their lordships, they held that no. During the period you were convicted in a different case, that period will not be allowed to be set off for the purposes of section 427 in the case in hand. So it was on the basis of these two judgments that now I decided this case. Now, the twist in the tail is that Atul Manu Bhai Parekh is a 2-judge bench. Prior thereto, a 3-judge bench in the case of Najakat Ali, which also you will find in this compilation, had held otherwise. And it said no, he is allowed, the person, a convict is allowed to count the entire set off, entire period of custody as set off in every case. However, that was a split decision. There was a dissenting view. And when Atul Manu Bhai Parekh was decided, their lordships noticed Najakat Ali. However, as I have said, I was telling you about the Delhi court, that judgment also I will be sending. In that case, the Delhi High Court, relying upon Najakat Ali, held that his lordship did not consider he also considered Atul Manu Bhai Parekh, but relied upon Najakat Ali to hold that the person would be entitled to count the entire period of detention in howsoever many cases regardless of the fact that that some of those periods would be conviction and sentence in some other case. So anyway, this is as I said, the two judgments run contrary to each other. And since I'll be sending both of them to you, you would be able to go through them and decide which one is more suitable. Now, having gotten over this, the other issue then is, how does a judge, supposing you people, well, in any case, my judgment is binding on you, so you will have to decide according to this judgment. So how does a magistrate come to know? What are the antecedents? How does a sentencing judge come to know what are the antecedents of this person who's brought before me? The local police may not have it. So what you have to do is to insist that the jail where the person is lodged, if he's in jail, or the jail where he was last lodged, if he was on bail, should send you what is called a custody certificate. That custody certificate would give you the details of all the cases in which the person before you has been involved, whether they are under trial or whether they are decided. So it would list out those cases in which the trial is going on and would also indicate if he's on bail in those cases or any one of them. It would indicate how many cases he has been acquitted in. And it would also indicate how many cases he has been convicted in. So when a person moves an application for bail on the ground of custody before you, you will have the custody certificate before you. And you would know exactly how much of this custody was as an under trial and how much of it was as a convict in a separate case. And then that period during which he was undergoing sentence in another case would have to be deducted from the period of custody which he may be claiming in the case where the bail is being sought. Likewise, at the time of sentencing such a person, when the custody certificate is before you, you would be able to come to know that while he was undergoing trial in your case, in the case before you, he was actually serving imprisonment in a prior FIR wherein he already stood convicted. So then you would have to decide as to whether the punishment you are imposing upon him can be said to been already undergone by him. Yes, if it is detention prior to conviction in any, it may be said to have been undergone by him. Read it with section 427 set off. But where he is already undergoing his sentence in another case, to my mind, he would not be entitled to claim that he may be sentenced to that term of imprisonment which he has already undergone. The third and the last point which I want to discuss with you is the grant of concurrence. Now the general rule is, in fact, section 428 mandates that punishment shall run consecutively unless the judge otherwise directs. So as per the code, the rule is successive imprisonment, but it is left to the sentencing judge to mitigate that. And as I said, the golden rule is the same transaction rule. So if I first break into your house, threaten you with a loaded gun, give you blows, and then force you to hand over your money and valuables to me and go away, so I have committed many offenses in that one offense. In that armed robbery or dacoity, if we were more than 5 people, I have also committed house trespass, breaking into, then 307, then dacoity, etc., etc., etc. So this is covered by this exact thing where one offense, during one offense, many offenses are part of that one, is by section 71 IPC. But there could be another situation where independent offenses are committed, but the transaction is the same. Where, for instance, I defraud different people. So the main offense is of defrauding, but I have committed so many individual and independent offenses against different people by defrauding different persons. So this latter is a case which may call for the exercise of some form of concurrence. But what we find is that in many, many cases, a person is found guilty, and at the time of sentencing, the judge will say that this sentence will run concurrent to another unrelated case. So while awarding concurrence, this fact must be kept in mind that the statutory requirement is for consecutive punishments, and a discretion is left to the judge to mitigate it in appropriate cases. So this discussion which we have had, actually, to tell you the truth, would be fruitful for all of you if you actually go through these two judgments, which I shall be. In fact, it is, in a sense, my mistake. I should have first insisted that these judgments be mailed to every officer so that all of you could have read it, and it could have been a much shorter session with more questions and answers. But anyway, my request to all of you is, do go through both these judgments. They will definitely provide food for thought. And Chetan, I'm ready for questions. Thank you very much.
Wow. That was real quick, sir. I'm just wondering, you said that if you would have mailed these judgments before, then there were more question answer, time for more question answer. But I think we still have a lot of time, sir. I think
Oh, yes, we have.
This is the fastest webinar that I have witnessed in Chennai Digital Academy. So
I don't know if that's a good thing or it's a bad thing. I really can't say.
Keeping things concise, I think it's an art. It's very easy for everyone to say things long, and I think your focus is very clear that you won't have more question answers. So, sir, I'll give you a first question that I already have with me right now. In the meantime,
Yes.
I will request all the other members to start putting the questions, and I'll be the mediator to put up your questions on behalf of you. So first question is, can trial court grant concurrence to accused convicted in two different cases?
Yes, you can. Section 428 says so, as I just said. But the golden rule is one transaction rule. If a person is convicted during one transaction, please grant concurrence. But if a person is convicted in two individual, distinct and independent offenses, there you should be aware of that. Of course, the court still has the power to grant concurrence. There's no doubt about that.
So, my lordship, there's a next question about when a criminal trial is to be concluded on conviction or when sentence is pronounced. If it is concluded when the sentence is pronounced, then why accused on bail is taken into custody on conviction, whereas his bail order is to be last till the conclusion of the trial?
I'm sorry. You said that the trial has concluded in conviction.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? So
yes,
if it's concluded in conviction and the person is on bail, he has to be taken in custody to serve out his sentence. If that is the question, I am not very sure if I got the question correct.
I think so. The first part is right. It says when the criminal trial is said to be concluded on conviction. The second part, when the question arises, is that when the sentence is if it is concluded when the sentence is pronounced, then why accused on bail is taken into custody on conviction?
Yes, to serve out the sentence which is imposed upon him.
Okay.
The officer just said now that sentence is imposed. So
yeah.
You have imposed sentence of 2 years. He was on bail. You will take him into custody to serve out his sentence and the jail authorities will give him the necessary set-off for that period which he underwent during his trial.
I will just seek the same thing from the person who has asked the question. If, sir, you have got the answer, good enough. If you have not, please, if you can re-ask your question. My lordship, question on how much sentence can a magistrate pronounce if he is the opinion or to pass concurrent sentence?
The power of sentencing of magistrates is well codified. And the magistrate can, subject to section 71 of the IPC and the other sections of the CRPC, wherein the powers of magistrates are the sentencing is there, can sentence as per the maximum permissible.
So I'm going to wait for some more questions, sir. For now, the questions are, I think we have to wait for
dried up. Yeah, let's wait.
What we'll, like you said, sir, in your session, that all these judgments that you've cited in your today's webinar will also be available. I would like to also mention, sir, that this training, this webinar that is being we are on right now, it's also getting recorded. So this entire video will also be available with a link. And then,
all right. Yeah, if they want that, but very well. Yes, that would be nice. But the more important thing is to go through these judgments and analyze them. It will help everybody in understanding what law is. I'm not saying which one is correct. As I said, the one which is binding is my judgment. But by reading, every officer has the right to feel that, yes, even though Justice Ajay Tiwari's judgment is binding on me, but I think the Delhi High Court judgment is correct. So that is something which, if you read, you would have you can decide that.
Obviously, the document also does play a very important role, but sometimes a lot of people have this dilemma that will this video be available or not? So I just wanted to add
Oh
that
yes,
part.
oh yes, oh yes. The video would be available.
So we have one question. Mr. Rajpal Raul has passed his regards to you, sir, first and foremost. The question is, in case at pre-trial stage, i.e. before challans, an accused wants to make confession, then what court should do? Because the police is still to file the challenges.
Yes, but there is no bar on recording of confession. A person can make a confession at any stage. There is no bar. If an extrajudicial confession can be made, then a confession can always be made before a magistrate also, even though no challan is there before it.
So can a convict be granted bail under section 389, subpart 3 of CRPC if he does not deposit fine?
Yes, there is. I don't normally. Again, it's there is. He can be granted bail for good reason if the judge has the right to grant bail to him. There's no. It cannot be said that he can in no circumstances be granted bail in lieu of non-payment of fine. In a particular case, a judge may still grant bail. There is no.
And sir, if a person is convicted in case A for life imprisonment on 20th of June 2020, and in case B, death sentence, then how will these sentences be executed?
No. Obviously, the death sentence will have precedence because in case A, his life is up till the time he is dead in case B. So that's. But yes, in section 428 itself, it is provided that if a person is already undergoing sentence of life and he is convicted in any other case, that sentence will run concurrent. There, the judge cannot say that no, after this life is over, then you will undergo the next 7 years. So that yes, that's a deemed concurrence that is specifically codified in section 428.
So, I think this is Neeraj Goyal, sir. Neeraj Goyal, sir, is from Khanna. I think I always say this. Neeraj Goyal, sir, is one of the most active member of the webinars. I always see his name in the questions answer round. I'll take his question, sir. Sir says that if a person is in custody in 2 cases and he is denied bail in 1 case and is convicted in the 2nd case, then whether his custody in first case in which he has been denied bail should be counted after the conviction in the 2nd case or not?
No, after the after, as I said, after he is convicted in the 2nd case, his status has changed. He is no longer an under trial accused entitled to the protection of presumption of innocence. The moment he is convicted in case B, from that instant onward, whatever imprisonment he is going to undergo would be in case B. So that period which is prior to his conviction may be counted for the grant of bail in case A, but not the period subsequent to his conviction in case B. If I've made myself clear, I don't know if it's clear.
I think Neeraj Goyal, sir, is very vocal about things. So if he is not really, if he needs more clarification, I think he will point it out.
Okay. Yes, but anybody who needs more clarifications is most welcome.
I think because this webinar is in a format that only it's a one-sided. So I think it is required from the members who are joining as attendee to do confirm or do seek more clarification if required.
Yeah.
So moving to the next question, it's a related question. If an accused in custody is undergoing 2 trials in different cases and is convicted in both, And if he is sentenced to a period already undergone by him in one of those cases, can he be given the set-off in the other cases as well?
Yeah, that is precisely the point. That is precisely the point. I think he cannot be given the set-off in that cases. The set-off is only, the word used in 427 is in that case. Within inverted commas, I'm putting it, in that case. And that is what was, in that case was what was discussed by the Supreme Court in the case of Atul Manu Bhai Parekh, which, as I said, will get to you. You will get it. So yes, the set-off can only be in that case and not in another case.
So we spoke about that, this, I think this is the same question, like a part of this question earlier. I will still read out this question. Can trial court grant concurrence to accused convicted in two different cases at different times of application to court?
Yes, you can. It can be done. As I've said already, the same, this question has appeared before in a slightly different form, but yes, 428 allows it.
So what is the relevant stage for considering previous conviction of accused? Whether recording of evidence of previous conviction is required in this case?
No, as I said, once there's no need for recording of evidence of previous conviction if it comes to you in the form of a custody certificate. The idea is to insist on a custody certificate. That is the important thing. The public prosecutor must bring before you the custody certificate.
Okay.
If every judge takes the trouble to summon the custody certificate, a lot of the yes, as I said in the very beginning, it's a very niche point. This applies only to those people who are, well, we say habitual criminals, if I may use the word. People who have been convicted more than once, twice, thrice, and you find that, empirically speaking, a person who's been, there are two categories. There are people who are involved in one case. So that is the vast majority of prisoners you will find, or convicts you will find. I'm sure everybody's experience would be that. Are people who are involved in just that one case. But there is a sizable percentage of people who are professionals, as we can say. Your people you will find are involved in many cases of theft. People who you find are involved in many cases of extortion. So those are the that is the niche of convicts to which this particular discussion related. That must be kept in mind.
So thank you for clarifying that. So the question says, I think it's a very, scenario-based question. The question is, the two complaint cases under section 138 titled Sham versus Ram and Amit versus Ram were tried separately against same accused, namely Ram.
Ram, yes.
And accused Ram was convicted via two separate judgments dated 1st of January 2019 for 1 year. And on 31st of December, same year, the accused Ram moved to an application to court that jail authorities be ordered to release him in both cases. The jail authority says that the accused can not be released, or as the sentence would be executed after another. Please guide. I think that's what we have already.
Yes, that is the idea. Unless in the subsequent decision, when you convicted Ram for the second time on 31st of December 2019, unless you said that the imprisonment in this case would be concurrent, then of course. But otherwise, the jail authority is right that there is no such clarification by the trial court, by the sentencing judge, and therefore they will run consecutively.
Sir, on conviction, sentence is suspended to enable the convict to file appeal. Then why fine is not suspended?
Because the important thing is there is a huge difference in the personal liberty of a person and the fine. Personal liberty is put at a much higher pedestal than the fine. And that is why the trial court will itself suspend the substantive sentence till the person files an appeal, till the convict files an appeal.
So we spoke. So you spoke about the 90 days 90 days after FIR. I think on the same lines, the question is that it says it is a rare privilege. First of all, Mr. Prashant Rana is saying that, it's not every day that we get to listen to you. So I think, and I've been getting a lot of messages that I've been just ignoring that. So to focus on the
Please do,
question.
please do.
So in the case of default bail, if the accused is implicated in the second case on 89th day of custody of the first case, would counting the custody period in both cases entire him to default bail, or would it not hamper the investigation in the second case?
No, if it's on the 89th day, of course not. Only the last day will be counted, the 90th.
Yes.
But supposing it's on the 21st day, instead of the 89th day, supposing it is the 21st day, then day 21 to day 90 would be counted in both. So he would be entitled to default bail on day 111, if my math is not wrong. 21 days of the first added to 90. So day 111, there the police cannot say, as I pointed out to you, that no, sir, the remand period in case number 2 should start on day 91. If he is arrested on day 21, that will start then and there. There the police can't say, sir, he is already there. What is this? We were investigating that case. So that is the point. On 89th day, it would not have too much of a difference.
Yes.
But if on the 21st day he's arrested in the second case, it would have a difference.
I think, my lordship, I think you said the same thing in a different way as well, that even the convict can't say that the 21 days which have been already lapsed in the first one should be included.
Yes, should be included, exactly.
Yeah, it's both ways. It's for the authorities as well as for the prisoner as well.
Yes,
so.
Yes.
So move to the next question. Trial court can order for concurrence of sentence awarded against the convict into independent and separate trials. I don't know if it's a statement or a question.
Yeah. Yes, it can. If it's a
okay.
If it's a statement, we agree with it.
So the judicial discretion in sentencing ends up many times in judicial discrimination because of unsettled position of law, especially in check bouncing cases. What should we do on this?
Now, this sentencing is very ticklish. Sentencing is very ticklish. It has to be left to the discretion and conscience of the judge. I do not think that there can be any. We cannot hamstring the judges by laying down where the law wants. It gives the minimum imprisonment. Right, so there the minimum imprisonment there. Otherwise, that is the whole idea of the law. The legislative intent is when they say up to, when the punishments for most offences are prescribed in terms of maximum, up to so many years, up to 3 years, up to 7 years, up to 10 years. That's how most punishments are prescribed, if I'm not wrong. That the legislative intent is that it is for the judge to weigh all the factors and then come to a conclusion as to how much sentence is just and proportionate in that particular case, after keeping the reformative aspect, the retributive aspect, the deterrent aspect, all these aspects the judge will have to consider. Yes, it is a tough call, but that's what judges are for.
Yeah. So moving about there's a question about the legality of what is written in the judgment sometimes. The question is now, some court passed the sentence of already undergone as a word without specifying the period. Is it legal to write like that?
It shouldn't be. Yes, it cannot be said to be illegal because the appellate court can find out what is the sentence, what was the period of custody. But I would say shoddy judgment writing. The judge must normally say that yes, he has undergone 1 year, he has undergone 18 months, and I sentence him to 18 months that which he has already undergone.
Making it a complete document.
Yes, it's so that everything is clear. It's just, as I said, shoddy judgment writing. It's not illegal.
So moving to the next one, it's in respect to the recovery is maternally for deciding the bail during trial in excise cases. The question is, at the time of passing consecutive sentences, whether the age of convict is relevant.
Everything is relevant. Everything, that is what I say. Sentencing has to be case to case, judge to judge. See, that is, in a sense, the weakness and the strength of our system. It's a weakness because law should be certain. It's a strength because this allows the particular judge to decide the particular case in the best interest of the accused, the victim, and society. So this is a dilemma we have to live with. Yeah, this is a balance we all have to do. Yeah. Every judge, that is why when you write undergone, which is so much, that means you applied your mind to it. Yeah. When you just write undergone, it's doubtful whether you have applied your mind to that or not. So this is something, this is almost the toughest part. Almost the toughest part. Because you are depriving a person of his liberty. You know, he is... and I mean, we all know where liberty stands. We all know where Article 21 stands. And therefore, tough as it is, this is a cross which every judge has to bear. You know, in every case, you have to apply your mind to how much would be right, how much would be just and fair.
So moving to the next question. If a given transaction constitutes two offences under two different enactments, is it justified to have consecutive sentences?
No, if it's the same transaction, then I think you'll have to read section 71 of the IPC. Let me see if I have it in my compilation, because reading is not so much, you know, reading out is not so much fun unless the other person also has the section. I think I had it somewhere, section 71, but please, yes. Section 71, now please, at least that person who asked it should hear carefully. Limit of punishment of offense made up of several offenses. Have you got it? What is the limit of punishment for an offense which in itself made up of several offenses? Where anything which is an offense is made up of parts, any of which parts is itself an offense, the offender shall not be punished with the punishment of more than one of such of his offenses, unless it be so expressly provided. So section 71 says so, that where the one offense, that example which I gave you, that I enter your house with 4 other people with a gun, I threaten you with the gun, I beat you up, and I take your money and I go. So it's one offense which is made up by several offenses. So you cannot say that I'm sentencing you for 3 years for housebreaking, for 7 years for 307, for 9 years for dacoity, and therefore putting you in for, what, 19 years. That's what section 71 says. Please remember to read section 71. This thing will be clarified to all those who may have this doubt of the IPC.
So, my lordship, I'm not really sure if I think you have answered this question, but just for the benefit of doubt, I think I'll read out the question. And so I would need your guidance if you've already answered this question or not. So the question is, a trial court can order for concurrence of sentence awarded against a convict in 2 independent and separate trials, and the trial is concluded after sentence is passed, then is it justified to take him to custody after judgment of conviction is passed, but the case adjourned for hearing on quantum when accused is on bail?
No, it may not be justified at that stage, because you may release him on probation. See, when you are going to sentence him, You may not sentence him to imprisonment. You may release him on probation. So, if you're going to release him on probation, then why take him in?
So the question says whether a default sentence can be imposed when compensation is awarded under Section 357, Clause 3 of CRPC.
Yes, because compensation and fine are two different things. Default is for fine. And even in default of compensation, imprisonment can be awarded. Why not? That if you do not compensate the victim.
So.
Then in view of that.
Very well, sir. Now, sir, now again a scenario-based question. A very
Those
small
are the
scenario.
best ones. Those are the best ones.
So.
The scenario-based questions are always the best ones. Yeah, because they give you a real picture of what the law is. I always used to say, you know what, Chetan, just an aside. I was a part-time lecturer for about 10 years. You know, when I was a lawyer. And I always used to tell everybody that when you read a section, if you can, in your mind, make an example of it, that means you've understood it for life.
Yeah.
If you can make a scenario as per that section, it's yours for life. So that is what scenario-based, because it means that you are relating the statutory provision and you are making it into a real-life situation.
Yes.
So yes,
I can understand to that, sir, what you're saying. I can totally relate to that.
So that's why I like scenario-based questions.
Yeah. Though it's a very small scenario, though this
it's
time
all right.
question.
It's all right.
It says A files 5 complaints under Section 138 of NI Act against B, and B is convicted in all the 5 complaints by the trial court. Whether concurrent sentences can be ordered by this court?
Yes, they can. Supposing it was like this, that B had taken money from A and was supposed to pay it back by 6 installments, which were to be paid monthly. And he gave checks every time. So even though there are 6 independent checks, 6 independent complaints, 6 independent convictions in that sense, if the court comes to the conclusion that it was one transaction, that yes, B had taken 6 lakhs rupees from A and had told him that I'll give you 6 monthly checks of 1 lakh rupee each, there, yes, concurrence can be granted. If it's part of the same transaction, if it's part of the same business dealing.
So a few minutes back, I raised a question when we were talking about a question, and I said that we'll ask the member himself if he has got the answer or not. I think we got a reply. So the question, I'll repeat the first question and then I'll read out the more explanated part of it. The first question was that when a criminal trial is said to be concluded on conviction, or when sentence is pronounced, if it is concluded when the sentence is pronounced, then why accused on bail is taken into custody on conviction, whereas his bail order is last till the conclusion of trial? This was a question. And
originally.
Yes, we tried to answer that, sir. Now the more elaborate version is, I mean, when and on conviction, sometimes case is adjourned for hearing on question of sentence.
Yes, sir.
Accused is taken into custody at the time of conviction, but this bail order is till conclusion of trial, means till sentence is pronounced. Then under which provision he is taken into custody, whereas his bail order is already there in conclusion of the trial?
Yeah, that's a very, 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 very important issue. See, what I think is, in practically speaking, if you have found somebody guilty of a serious offense, you always would like to feel that yes, he should be there to hear his sentence. And in fact, the whole issue of bail is based on this thing, that the person would be available to face his trial. But this is since he's been found guilty and it's a serious offense, it would be deemed cancellation of bail, I guess. That was the only thing that now, having found you guilty, yes, you're right, it may be that if the bail has been granted till the conclusion of trial, but unless we say that a judge has an inherent right to cancel bail for good reasons. The bail can always be cancelled for good reasons. And it could maybe be argued, it's a very, very tough question for me because I hadn't really thought of it. But off the top of my head, I could only say that it can be related to the power to cancel bail for good, sound reason. So if today I appear before you in the capacity of an accused and you convict me under 307 and I'm being on bail, you could very well say that, well, I'm not sure if this man will, now that I've convicted him under 307, he knows he's going to be in for 5-6 years. The bail order, I am not sure. You may have good reason to say that, to feel that I may not appear to face my sentence. I guess that is the only power to which it can be related. But it's a very, very tricky question, and maybe I think I'll need to read it up.
So, I think this is the beauty of webinars, because I think usually we're not able to, ask these questions because of time scarcity and everything. But I think in webinar you can think about it, you can leave the question, and then when the turn comes in, we can raise the question. I think.
Yeah, that was a very tough question. That was a very tough question, and I must compliment whoever asked it and ask them to study a little more, like I will. And if you find it, if you find an answer, please convey it to me also.
Sure. So the question is, after joint trial of 2 cases conviction, will it be considered as one or a separate?
The convictions will be 2 if it's a joint trial. For the purpose of sentence, again, the question would be if the trial court gives concurrence, it's in that sense it would be the same. But the convictions will have to be 2.
So, and it totally depends on the judge that will.
The sentencing. That's a sentencing issue. That's a sentencing issue. That's post conviction. It's an independent, as we've seen. Conviction is one thing. Sentencing is a next stage altogether.
So when a person is convicted in appeal while the judgment of acquittal is reversed, then whether the convict is to be granted bail if he is to be convicted for 3 years, while suspending his sentence under section 389 of CRPC.
Yes. Yes. Even if he has been convicted by a judgment of reversal in appeal, if he's sentenced for less than 3 years, yes, that's right. It's only in appeal that but as a matter of prudence, because he still has one remedy of revision against it. It's not compulsory under 3, as has been rightly pointed out. But as a matter of prudence, I would say that the appellate court would lean in the favor of the liberty and grant him bail for a period of time for him to pursue a remedy and go up in revision if so advised. So, I mean, more real life than doctrinaire answer, really. It's not a doctrinaire answer, it's a real life answer.
So, now, sir, the question about if imposing rider while rewarding life imprisonment, that is no remission till 20 years, as only High Court or Honorable Supreme Court has the power to modify. What about the case in which express punishment for remainder natural life is provided, whether such punishment can be provided, like in rape offences?
The remainder of the life can be provided. The restriction on remissions and paroles and furloughs cannot be done. Okay. This is the very latest decision of the Supreme Court. I think the officer is referring to the judgment which has just appeared in the press a couple of days back. Okay. So the remainder of life imprisonment can be awarded, but that restriction of restricting remissions or saying that he would not be entitled to parole or furlough, that cannot be done.
So,
That is my understanding.
so in NDPS cases, when accused is already sentenced in number of cases, then in a particular case before the court, for the purpose of enhanced punishment, what procedure should be adopted by the court?
Yes, I think the only procedure it is, as I said, if you have the custody certificate, all the answers are there. You just give a list of the FIRs and the convictions and the punishments imposed, and that is justification for awarding enhanced punishment.
So there comes the favorite, your and mine favorite scenario-based question for us. An accused is convicted and sentenced by JMIC, who suspends sentence for 1 month to enable the convict to file appeal, which, however, is filed after expiry of 1 month. Convict seeks suspension of sentence and bail during the pendency of the appeal. Can the appellate court deny him for the relief on the grounds that he did not file appeal within 30 days? Or can the appellate court say that convict should first surrender before the trial court and then his application for suspension of sentence will be considered?
Yes, I think the second course is more appropriate, that he should surrender and then the application will be considered, and then consider it quickly. That's right. Then I don't think we should try and punish him for not filing it, right? It's not that now that he's surrendered, now I'll take it up after 2 months. That may not be fair. Let him surrender, and as quickly as practicable, his application for suspension be taken up and decided on merits.
So I think this question, the next question I'm going to read, I think we have already answered it. But again, like I said, I will read it out for the benefit of doubt. Can court entertain application of convicted person after judgment is pronounced to make the sentence passed as concurrent to one already being undergone by the accused in another case?
Yes, why not? Why not?
So,
but if already sentence has been imposed and at that time it is not brought to the notice of the court, this prayer is not made, then the court, I think, cannot do it. Then he will have to seek it in appeal.
Okay.
If it is brought, if it is brought to the notice before the sentence is awarded and he's sentenced, this has to form part of the sentence. It cannot, to my mind, be moved later on afterwards.
I think it's a very important point. It's a very important point that you raised on this.
Then it has to be taken by appeal court, by the superior court.
So a magistrate is competent to order fine up to 10,000, but in excise cases, which is trialable by magistrate, minimum fine is 1 lakh. Whether he can impose.
Yeah, I think there are judgments on this. I'm so sorry. I do recall having read this, but I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to answer it right now. There is some law on this. That's all I can say. So if the person who's asked it searches a little diligently, they will find the answer.
Interesting. So I think the judgment would give the answer to this question like completely with all the...
No, not this judgment, because this has got nothing to do with the question.
No, but not the judgment. If the question that is raised.
Yes. There is law on this.
So talking, another question is, please tell the judicial discretion in case of granting punishment in offence under 304A of IPC, or a judge is bound to give punishment of minimum 2 years.
No, 304A, the minimum is prescribed under section 304A. Is it prescribed?
So I think that's what the question says. They say the judge is bound to give punishment 2 years at least. And I think that's where the question has been raised.
If the minimum punishment is prescribed, then you have to do it.
Then you have to do it. And I think the name is not written over here, the person who asked the question. I would request, sir, because the question has two elements and it's a bit contrary, because the first one says the judicial discretion in case of granting punishment, and then it says, or a judge is bound to give punishment 2 years at least. So
if it's prescribed,
yes,
then that means the minimum is prescribed and beyond that is your discretion.
yes.
If the maximum is prescribed, then below that is your discretion. That's how I understand sentencing.
So I think I will request the member to please elaborate on it, and then we can take this question again later on. So whether accused is entitled for default bail if incomplete challan presented, that is without FSL report.
Again, there is a lot of law in this. In cases of in NDPS cases, one of the grounds for grant of bail is the fact that the FSL report hasn't come, though I don't think it's a ground for default bail. It's not a ground for default bail under 167. I would not say that that the challan is so deficient, because really FSL, the report of the FSL is evidence. It's not the charge. So default bail, I don't think would be permissible, though it may be a ground to grant regular bail or interim bail, at least till such time as the FSL report comes.
Very well, sir. So the question now, can a magistrate refuse to suspend sentence of convict who was tried and convicted by him in case triable by magistrate?
If the punishment is below that, then you have to suspend it to enable him to file appeal. That's all. 3 years.
Okay, sir.
If you impose higher punishment than 3 years, then you need not do it. Then you need not do it, but you can if you feel like it. If you think there are some issues.
Question, I think this is the second last question now. A surrendered before the court and was sent to custody. Intimation regarding the same was sent to concerned IO, but police filed application. I think it's an incomplete sentence. But the police filed application for, I think the person could not complete the sentence. I'll take the next question, sir. So in criminal appeal before sessions and additional session judge, sentence is suspended in routine. Should there be some guidelines laid out for that?
No. Again, this is part of the discretion of every judge. There may be appropriate cases, there may not be appropriate cases, but I don't think there can be any one-size-fits-all rule which we can impose as superior courts that in these cases sentence should be suspended, in these cases should not be suspended. It has to be on the discretion of, if it's done in routine, well, that's how the judge does it.
Right, rightly said.
So
I think now we have the complete question. So are you saying something?
No, I was just going to ask you if the question has come.
Yes, sir, the question is there now. So we were talking about A surrendered before the trial court and was sent to the judicial custody. Intimation regarding the same was given to police. Police sought permission to arrest the accused, and police remand after 15 days of his date of surrender. Where the period of 15 days before arrest would be computed. I think again an incomplete sentence, but yeah, computed maybe.
So what I think, if I'm not wrong, this is again a very interesting scenario-based question. He's saying that a person surrenders before the court and is put in judicial custody. And after 15 days, the police first time says that now we want a police remand.
Yes.
Again, that's a very tricky, very nice question.
I would like to add another thing. I think there's another part to it. It says when it said before arrest would be computed for default bail or not.
For default bail, yes, that would be computed. That would be computed.
That's the now, because the person just mentioned another question.
That would have to be computed.
I think that answers the question yeah, easily. I think now we have one or more questions. Can the court grant interim bail till the receipt of forensic FSL
Yes.
report? So,
Yes, yes.
forensic report to an accused in the case involving commercial quantity.
Yes, why not?
And it says I think the minimum is not prescribed under 304A. Okay, that's another question. So for the FSL report,
Yes,
it can be.
court can. It can be.
And sir, a few minutes back, we were talking about the 304A minimum 2 years. I've got the update on that. The member is saying that minimum is not prescribed in 304A. So I think
Then why should you have a minimum? Absolutely. There's no understanding. My whole the point I was trying to repeatedly make is this: sentencing has to be by the judge on the facts of each case. There can be no parameters for this, unless those which are statutorily provided. There can be no judicial parameters for this. So where it says maximum up to 7 years, anything up to 7 years.
Yeah.
It says at least, then anything beyond.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That.
So can we call it a day?
So one more clarification question, and I think that is the last. It says, sir, can we say that trial concluded on acquittal or conviction, or should we say sentencing forms the part of the trial?
Well, if we the latest thing where you can get a cue from is this Prashant Bhushan case. That's what the Supreme Court said, that that till the sentence is pronounced, the trial is going on. So offhand, this is the latest law which I can think of. It was appeared in the press, I think, just yesterday, day before.
Sure. I think very well, sir. I think, like you said, we can conclude the session now, sir.
All right. I would like to thank everybody who took the time out to attend it, and I hope got something out of it. As I said, you will be able to get more out of it if you go through these two judgments which will be coming to you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chetan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think on behalf of the Academy, I would like to thank you, sir. And like you already mentioned that the members' presence was very, very, very important, because without them, the session would have not made any impact. So thanks to everyone. Thanks to the Judicial Academy. And so I think on behalf of everyone, I think I can't thank you enough for keeping it so interesting, keeping it so concise, and bringing so much value on the session, sir.
Thank you so much, Chetan. Thank you very much.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.